In the war zone of Kinluo, there was a large green island, full of trees known as the entrance to the Eternal Kingdom. Somewhere on the island were all the military commanders from all the war zones. Among them was Saik-shun Yu's father, who had his hand under his chin and was watching attentively. Next to him was Ji-yu Kaishan, who began staring at the screen, waiting for Yong and the others to arrive. A while later, Yong and the others arrived on the island. Luo Sandout turned toward our boy and with a cheerful look mentioned that the king of the Celestial Sword was seated in the first row of Jengho district. Yong's attention turned to the side. With a calm expression he mentioned that this was easy to understand, and he noticed that the sealed king Ji Hongyan was also present. A question came to his mind. He did not know why he too was sitting in the Jengho district. Behind them was Mu Henkyu. She began to gaze at the ground silently. Just then, Saik-shun Yu appeared, while she was red as a tomato. She placed her hand on her arm, looked away and explained that the reason was that currently the war zone of the Magic City had no national protector, so her father would take charge. Upon seeing Saik-shun Yu, Luo Sandout and Mu Henkyu's eyes filled with fury. They stood in front of Yong and started covering him with their arms. She was a captain of an enemy team, and they thought she was trying to win over Yong. Upon seeing their behavior, the mind of our boy was filled with confusion. He remained silent, not knowing what to do or how to act. A crack opened in the sky, and a giant flying ship appeared. On the ship were several men, a general, and another man with white hair. They were from the war zone of the capital, and the combat power of the ship could be compared to the level of an 8th rank protector of the country. Fang Zhenghao was the national protector of the capital and feared that others would not know how great and powerful his family was. The star of the capital, Ying Zan, jumped off the ship. His eyes were full of determination, and his body was radiating a powerful energy capable of making even the most powerful feel fear. Everyone recognized the legendary Ying Zhang, who had an extraordinary presence. Just then, another crack appeared in the sky, and although the people of the capital were very arrogant in terms of style, the war district of Guanghai was not far behind. A powerful golden dragon with several heads emerged from the crack, and it was carrying a giant coffin with chains. On top of the dragon was a man wearing a summer shirt. It was Ying Zan Tian, his eyes spread with joy. And with a confident smile, he extended his hand toward the coffin, announcing that his team called Rebirth Towards Death was going to emerge from the coffin. The coffin fell on top of the dragon and began to break into pieces. The coffin fell to the ground, but just then, the participants from the Guanghai war zone emerged. Among them was a man with long hair. Ying Zan Tian revealed that this year, the first place was going to belong to their war zone. Now that all the participants had arrived, a giant portal appeared, and while some were entering, others stayed silently observing. The first round consisted of a team battle. Out of 8 major war zones, 4 were going to be eliminated. Within the secret realm, the survival area would shrink every hour, and if any team remained motionless, they would be struck by thunder as punishment. Everyone entered the portal, and the last team was Jinganan's team. Jiying and the others began scanning the area. This place was a forest with abandoned buildings. This was the area where the team battles were going to take place. Jiying was the captain, so the others asked him what to do now. The portal disappeared in the sky. Jiying's eyes filled with confusion. He turned to Bai Feng and asked what they meant. With a serene gaze, Bai Feng extended his hand and explained that among the 8 major war zones, the probability of participating in this was 1 in 1,000. If they wanted to eliminate their opponents, then they had to find a way to take initiative first and gain an advantage. Everyone remained silent, thinking about what to do now, while on the other side, Mu Henkyu began staring at Bai Feng and couldn't help but feel furious. She asked how he could speak like that to the captain, demanding that he show more respect, just before things could escalate to another level. Jiying intervened and placed his hand on her head, closed his eyes, and with a forced smile thought that Bai Feng was right, since in a situation like this it was better to get organized. Our boy reached into the storage space and asked everyone to wait. Seeing this, everyone felt happy, thinking that the captain had already made some preparations. Jiying took out a sofa, meat, vegetables, and a grill. He sat on the ground, rested his hands on his knees, started observing them, and decided it was time to begin. The others began to observe in silence, naming everything Jing had taken out of the system's storage space. Luo Sandao, Bai Feng, and Tang Ying were shocked and open-mouthed, and it didn't take long for them to realize that Jing wanted to organize a barbecue. Our boy started putting the meat on skewers. Mu Henkyu clenched her fists and couldn't help but feel furious, and even though Jing did almost everything right, according to her this was a bit inappropriate. Luo Sandao sided with her, saying that now was not the time to be having barbecues since it was a matter of life or death. Tang Ying turned around and put her hand over her face out of embarrassment. She knew that although our boy had many virtues, he was not made to be the team leader. Jing's eyes filled with surprise and confusion upon seeing his team's reaction. Bai Feng approached, and his attention fixed on the skewers. With a confused gaze, he questioned whether Jing did not remember the rules. If they stayed still, they would be struck by lightning. The mind of the man standing next to him filled with surprise. He could not believe that Jing was behaving this way in a situation like this. Our boy put the meat on the skewer and casually said that he already knew the rules, but eating a little barbecue wasn't going to be a problem since, after all, only by being full did one have the energy to fight. Jing Wushuing placed his hand on his jaw, and his eyes spread in surprise. For him, Jing had come up with a wonderful idea. With a smile, he decided to help prepare the barbecue. Jing Wushuing and our boy sat down and started preparing the barbecue. The others were somewhat confused upon seeing that he had also joined Jing. According to them, the team shouldn't have two such unreliable people at the same time, or perhaps there was a deeper meaning behind this. Liu Sandao clenched her fists, and her eyes filled with joy. She finally understood what Jing meant. Little by little everyone began to believe that this made sense. The man who was next to her put his hand under his chin and with a smile thought that Jing was brilliant, while the man who had his arms crossed couldn't help but feel excited. Everyone decided to listen to the captain and help. A red-haired girl grabbed a skewer and, with a happy gaze, started putting slices of roasted potatoes on it since it was her favorite dish. Jing, who was sitting behind them, turned toward her and his eyes filled with confusion. His expression changed. He was somewhat surprised to see that everyone had agreed on having a barbecue. The reason he had decided to make one was because he was hungry. Ever since the small insects had started reproducing again, his appetite had been insatiable. He wasn't afraid of being struck by lightning since this way he could recharge his ability. But seeing the expressions of his companions now made things no longer seem as simple as they appeared. While he was distracted, Mu Hangqiu approached him and with a smile explained that now she also understood it. Thinking that Jing's thoughts were too deep, she was very foolish and hadn't thought it through well. With a calm expression, Jing asked what she had understood. In response, she put her hand behind her head, closed her eyes and explained that everyone had understood Jing's plan, and if she said she didn't understand it, she'd look foolish. Jing couldn't help but fall into confusion not knowing what was happening. After preparing the skewers, Jing Wushuing placed them on the grill. The strategy our boy was using had only appeared once in history. If he hadn't reviewed the lists of geniuses from hundreds of generations ago, he really wouldn't have understood it. He didn't expect our boy to make such an effort for this evaluation. To him, he was a captain worthy of the title. He started cooking the skewers and his gaze fixed on Jing. He thought that Jing's plan was to wait calmly to attack those who were exhausted. It was like pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger. Although it was a good plan, it was extremely risky. Jing wasn't afraid of everyone joining forces against him. Feeling Jing Wushuang's gaze, our boy began observing him silently, not knowing what this guy was plotting. Jing Wushuing started wondering if this was what they called an invincible heart. For him, it wasn't surprising that his grandfather had asked him to approach Jing and observe him closely. Compared to him, what Jing Wushuing lacked wasn't talent or strength but the determination not to fear anything. Jing's eyes began to shine with seriousness. He asked why Jing Wushuing was looking at him so intensely. Wushuing, who was grilling the skewers, mentioned that he wasn't as good as him. Jing stood up and told him that his skewers were burning. The screen started showing everyone that Jing Wushuing and our boy were preparing skewers. Everyone remained silently watching. Fu Kaishan's eyes filled with rage and disappointment. He couldn't believe that while others were preparing or investigating, Jing was having a barbecue. He thought he had learned it from Hong Yao. As a captain, he was leading others astray. Being in embarrassment, he didn't know how Jing would be able to face old Duan afterward. The red-haired man named Fang Zhenghao couldn't help but laugh. He mocked him, saying that this time Jing Nan had prepared very well. Upon hearing this, Zai Zinu's father's attention was fixed on him and his eyes filled with fury. This also caught the attention of Jiyu Kaishan, who turned around and began staring at him intently. Several years ago, during the competition, the human emperor had massacred many of his opponents using the dragon sword. When he was young, he had deliberately stopped in one place, waiting for lightning to strike him so that later he could lure 4 teams to investigate, leading to a battle where he massacred everyone. All of this had been carried out entirely by himself. His ferocity, his bravery, his determination made people admire him. Many years had passed, and no one had been able to achieve a feat like his. Fang Zhenghao's eyes filled with confidence as he mocked them, saying that they had first learned things like chicken droppings and dog excrement. According to him, they didn't deserve it. The others intervened, explaining that a deserter like him couldn't say such things. The man crossed his arms and began to laugh. Zai Zinu's father placed his hand on Jiyu Kaishan's shoulder and, with a forced smile, asked him not to get angry. Despite being somewhat furious, he decided to comply and remain silent. Someone caught the attention of the others by revealing that the war zones of Qin Luo, Wu Xiang, King Lan, and Tian Fu were going to unite again and that the capital was going to face a big problem. Jiyu Kaishan started staring at the man with a piercing gaze, mentioning that this generation of geniuses was not weak and that the capital was indeed going to have problems. The man extended his hand and with a confident expression made it clear that a group of useless people would not be able to stand up to the geniuses of the capital. The screen began to display a map. Jiyu Kaishan stood up and it didn't take long for him to realize that the 4 elite regions didn't seem to be aiming at the capital, but rather at Jinganan. They didn't want to attack the strong. They wanted to go after the weak. Fang Zhenghao couldn't help but laugh upon seeing that they had finally learned something. For him, this was going to be a good show to watch. Somewhere in the secret realm, there was a group of men. One of them started looking to one side and with an alert gaze revealed that he had found Jinganan's group. They couldn't believe they were having a barbecue and also had no defenses around them. This was something unusual, so they realized something wasn't right and thought they were setting up a trap. The long-haired man's eyes filled with confusion upon seeing that they were hungry in a situation like this. Tianfu's number 1 pride, the team captain named Liu Oshun clenched his fist and began releasing powerful energy. His attention focused on Jing and the others. He told his men to stop arguing. No matter what Jing's team did, they should advance directly according to plan. They still had comrades standing guard, so they'd be able to defeat them quickly. The 20 elites would divide into 3 groups. Their group would mainly focus on containing Jing Weishuang, while Wu Qingqing's group would be responsible for taking down Jing Chen. The first celestial genius of Kai Yuo, named Wu Qingqing, extended her hand and summoned some daggers. Her eyes were shining with confidence, and although Jing mastered calamities, he could not use them here. As long as they did not give him the chance to unsheath his sword, defeating him would be easy. But the task of Dan Lishuang's group was going to be the most arduous and required taking care of the rest of the group. The first genius of Wuxian, named Dan Lishuang, clasped her hands together and began using her powers, making water appear. With a gaze full of determination, she vowed to purify them all. Liu Ocean's eyes filled with excitement. He gave Liu Hang the order to use the portal to help the others. The number 1 genius of Qinglan, Liu Hang, extended his hand and made a portal appear. While they were preparing to attack, Jing and the others were eating. Wu Caxan's attention was fixed on the screen, and he couldn't help but sweat. The enemy was already less than 500 meters away, and yet they hadn't detected them. To him, this made no sense because even if Jing hadn't noticed it, Jing Oshun should have. And if this continued like this, they were going to end up dead. The other generals couldn't hail but feel happy. The grey-haired man mentioned that Liu Hang's hidden ability in the spatial system was unparalleled. The muscular man crossed his arms and started laughing. mentioning that Wu Yadu was the best assassin in the world. The woman said that Li Shuang was the first goddess with an aquatic class in all of Daxia. The white-haired man also joined in. He forcefully hit the table with his fist and said that Liu Oshun was the best strategist. All of the geniuses' gazes fixed on Jing, who was sitting on the sofa eating as if nothing had happened. Jing Oshwang stood up and couldn't help but go on alert. He didn't expect the enemy to arrive before they were struck by lightning. He turned towards Jing, who was enjoying some good skewers. The enemy was less than 100 meters away, and he couldn't believe that Jing still hadn't done anything about it. He came to the conclusion that Jing hadn't noticed the presence of the enemy. Jing grabbed a piece of meat and took a bite. Now their enemies were less than 10 meters away. Liu Oshun thought they had victory assured. But just then, Jing threw the meat, put his hand near his mouth with an unpleasant expression, and started spitting. He didn't know who had roasted the claws of the fierce beasts since they weren't even cooked. The roasted claws hit Liu Oshun's face, his eyes filled with fear as he began observing Jing without knowing if he'd been discovered. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, please subscribe our channel and like and share the video. Welcome to our channel.